Okay, now you might look at some of these and maybe you're like, okay, some of them kind of make sense, but some of them don't kind of make sense. Why does it not make sense, right? In this case, in this first one, right, we get the split of light and shadow. However, I would say that in this one, most of the background is kind of in shadow, I would say. So I would actually almost turn the form to maybe be lit more like this, okay? Now, what's also missing is what? The ambient light from the sky, right? The influence of the sky. And so it'd be green plus a little bit of blue, and we get something like this. Now I can pick values quite fast just because I'm just, you know, I've trained myself, but, and then here we're really missing the bounce light from the sand. Now I'm doing a really crappy job because I don't have her sphere selected. So I'm going to break the edge of the sphere. Now notice when I just color pick, that's way too light, right? I literally have to go here and maybe just shimmy down to a warmer green, right? And now pick a green. And that makes a little more sense like that. Now that feels a little bit more believable in this one, perhaps. Okay. This one, so I'll toggle back and forth. Okay. This one, it doesn't work because we have to ask ourselves, why or how is this environment behind lit and where is the light coming from? Remember, I've told you guys all this stuff. When you're doing plein air, ask yourself, what's the ratio of light to shadow? Where is the light coming from, right? If you don't understand where the light's coming from, don't even paint. Don't even sketch till you understand where the light's coming from. Is it coming from in front of you? Is it lighting your landscape frontally? Is it lighting your landscape from the top right, the top left, etc.? Is it behind, right? In this case, this whole scene is backlit. Okay. So everything's in shadow. The water's getting the reflection because water is water. It catches the reflection from the sky behind. So in that case that I know that this whole scene is backlit, the local color is this. I need to basically put this whole sphere in shadow. Now, do you see how that makes a little bit more sense, right? It feels a little bit flat. Yes, let's just mix in a little bit of that top skylight, the gray sky from the top. In this case, I'm literally what? I'm just desaturating orange because orange and blue are complements. So if I desaturate orange, it's already going to start feeling a little cooler, thus reflecting the top planes, thus reflecting the sky that's influencing the top planes. It would almost be something like this, very simple. Something like that. Okay. Now that does look a little bit more believable. Something like this as well, right? This whole thing, it's basically, it's more overcast. Okay. How I know that's because if it was more sunlight, you would start to get leaves that look something like this, and you get much more maybe dappled lighting on the ground. Okay, so this is telling me that there's some light hitting, but definitely more overcast. Okay, so I would light it definitely a little bit more evenly, something like that. Okay, I'm doing really, really quick paint overs. So those are some examples of how, for example, compare this time of day, okay, with this time of day right here, guys. Can you see how this is at noontime? How I know is that the lighting is really flat. It's almost like they're top lit and there's very harsh shadows. Okay. So something like this, I'm taking clues from environment. It would almost be something like this, and the shadow would probably be a little bit shorter. You can add a little bit of light, a little bit of maybe a specular highlight. Maybe a little bit of gradation, but it'd be something much more like this. Okay. So a mistake that I see commonly is that you see, what this person did is that they basically decided, oh, the Terminator cuts in half all the time. That's not the case. Okay. It doesn't always cut in half, in all cases. It depends on where the light source is in relation to your subject matter, which I'll show very soon. Now, here's another one, okay, where there's some mistakes that are being made that I want to show you guys, I'm not going to show you all of them. You can see probably the ones that don't make sense. Ask yourself why. Okay, I'm going to say namely these two right here. Okay, the first one right here. This person got confused with where the shadow and where the light is. Okay, they saw this and they said, oh, that's light. Okay, well, in terms, it's actually really strong bounce light. Okay, because you're in the Grand Canyon and there's so much warmth around. That's bounce light. That's just bouncing from walls here to here, here, all here. Okay, but it's still in the shadow. All this is in shadow, but that person got confused, and that's why they're lighting this ball from the left. The direct light you can clearly see is coming from this side, right? Behind this rock face right here. So if we placed a ball right here, yes, you could light it, like that. And then you could, light it like that. And that would make sense, right? But because she placed the ball in shadow, it doesn't make any sense right now. So we got to go back. We got to go, okay, so this is in shadow. The local color is green. I'm going to take her local color and I'm just going to fill it. Maybe you get a little bit of the influence of the skylight of only on the top facing planes. Okay. So in the top facing planes, I'm just mixing a little bit of blue. And of course it has to be the right shadow. I was picking a blue that was slightly too dark. So maybe something like this. Now I can push however much I want. That feels a little too pushed, to be honest, a little too obvious. I'm going to make it a little bit less obvious. Now, what will really sell this is that beautiful bounce light. Okay. That bounce light on the bottom here, that to me feels like the wrong value. Still feels like the wrong value. So maybe something more like this. I'm actually trying to pick the green to blend it back in a little bit to not have it so obvious, the bounce light, since it's floating, right? It's not close to the ground. But it might be something like this. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Because this ball is placed in shadow. The other one I'm going to talk about is this. Okay, again, taking lighting cues from your environment. This cow is completely in shadow, save for some top light. Okay, and the whole background's fog, so that fog acts as a diffuser. Okay, but you can see that there is some sunlight peeking in and lighting the top planes of these cows. So this makes no sense because this ball looks front lit. Okay. So if you can, this is the next step to plein airs. If you understand plein airs, this is the next step to sort of, before lighting complex things, practice lighting a sphere. It's a lot harder than you think it is because spheres have no planes. That's why it's harder. So in this case, it'd be almost something like this. And maybe we get that really nice top sizzle light. It's not called sizzle light. I just made that up. I like how it looks, but it's like that top beautiful rim light from the top. You also don't get, I think they also paint it over here, which doesn't make sense. So we have to just, it looks like a drop shadow. Notice the shadows here where you can barely see it. Okay. On the cow, it's not a drop shadow. It's not like this. Okay. It's a much more subtle shadow that we can also incorporate in the sphere here. Okay, so maybe something more like this. Maybe we can just darken the areas that go into the shadow just a little bit more and slightly play with that. It looks funny, guys, because it looks like there's a ring light around my sphere because I'm not using the mask, but hopefully you guys get the idea. Okay, so all these spheres here, I'm sorry to say they're lit wrong. Okay, so it's about being able to understand the cues. I'll show one that was lit quite well. So I'll show an example